6. The worth of souls in Jesus' name. Epilogue. Friday afternoon, Shelley knocked softly and slipped into her daughter's room, which overlooked the front lawn. Jeffy sat in the window seat, knees drawn up, gazing out. Shelley herself had sat in this very window many years ago when she'd first come to California for the mart. Shelley peered over her daughter's shoulder, took in the lush green of the lawn, the splash of pink and yellow flowers that bordered the walkway that circled the fountain. She and Jeffy had played in that fountain many times. Her eyes traveled the length of the drive down to the security gate. Getting anxious? Shelley asked. Jeffy nodded, rubbed her hands up and down her arms. It seems to be taking forever. Well, traffic is probably a nightmare between the airport and here this time of day. They'll be here soon enough, or should I say, he'll be here. Jeffy sighed. I miss him, Mom, so much. Recognizing her need to talk, Shelley sat behind her daughter and wrapped her arms around her. How much, baby girl? Well, I feel so empty when he's not here. I try to concentrate on other things, but I can't. I know it's silly. I understand the emotional pull that happens with the first love. I understand the rush of hormones and the pheromones and everything else involved, yet logic doesn't seem to help me stop feeling this way. And it won't. Only time. Believe it or not, I still miss your dad whenever he's away. But you're so strong, so independent. Shelley gave a soft laugh. You think so? Yes, everyone does. Oh, everyone, huh? No, really, Mom. Bree, Aunt Angel, Uncle Jason, Uncle Justin, Jeff, my brothers. Well, that's hardly everyone. Well, people come up to me all the time when I'm at school and ask about Bree and Ricky and Joey and you. They always say stuff like, what a great example you are for being a strong role model for women. Shelley shrugged. Well, I won the mart, and that's something I'll always be proud of, but I didn't do it alone. Your father trained me, not just physically, but emotionally too, and he helped me to see my worth. He taught me to love myself and to have confidence and to trust my instincts. And there was a time when I didn't think I could function without your dad by my side. But I've learned that, though I would miss him desperately, I can stand alone. Yeah, that's the way I feel. That you can stand alone? Oh no, desperate. How do you learn to stand alone? Shelley took a moment to think about her answer. She didn't want it to be something trite, like it will come with time or maturity. She truly wanted to help her daughter find her way through the maze. She didn't want her to think that women couldn't stand on their own, but she also didn't want her to think that strong, protective men were a bad thing. Women were meant to be with men and not be alone. She sighed. I think, my sweet Juneflower, that women must learn to not give themselves away completely. What do you mean? Well, women are taught to give, 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 give. It's the loving, motherly, even saintly thing to do, and that is true. We give and we love freely and unselfishly, at least we should. Well, most of us want to be the best mother and the best wife, and that doesn't take a weak woman, that takes a strong woman. We want to be a force for good in the world, but it doesn't help anyone when we give ourselves away. I still don't understand, Mom. How does one give themselves away? Well, I'll give you an example. Suppose Cameron asks you what movie you'd like to see, and to please him, you tell him to choose, offering no opinion when he says he'd like to see something that you have absolutely no interest in. Pretend you marry him. Not that I think you should, but I know you've imagined it. So you're married. He suggests you live in a 2-story brick home in Montana, while you've always wanted to live in a stucco ranch in Arizona. He suggests a blue sports car, while you always wanted to drive a yellow Jeep. He thinks you should have 5 children. He thinks you should be vegetarian. He thinks you should vote the way he votes. He thinks. Okay, Mom, I get it, but how many women really would concede to all of that? Oh, you'd be surprised how many, Jeffy. You see, women get it all mixed up. A good woman wants to serve her man and make him happy. That's true. A good man would honor you and respect you and treat you as his companion. And you're both equally important with equally important decisions, though I have to say you do have different roles, but the roles are also equally important. Men and women are different, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And a good man would sometimes compromise if you and he had a difference of opinion. But sometimes he would insist on his own decision, and usually that would be because he thinks it's beneficial for both of you or for the family. So a good man respects his woman and wants to hear what she has to say and wants her as his equal in most things. Still, Moonflower, you must always be aware that the most important thing in any relationship, other than God, is to be honest and true to yourself first. And that, sweetheart, is how you be strong. Don't give yourself away in hopes to make a relationship last. How happy a situation could that possibly be? How long could that last? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Jeffy nodded thoughtfully. I think I do. No matter what, continue to be the person I am or the person I want to be. And if I do that, I'll have relationships with people who can appreciate who I am and who wouldn't want to ask me to change to suit them. Right. But now I'm going to backtrack a bit. That doesn't mean you can't compromise. When he wants one thing and you want another, you can discuss it, giving respect to each other's ideas, and somehow either arrive at a meeting of the minds or agree to disagree. It is. But here's something else to think about. Two people can love each other but not be good for each other. Usually that's mainly because what they think is love is just chemistry. There has to be something beyond the physical attraction. Chemistry flares and dies out unless you have a few other things, which are, well, first and foremost, if you both love God above all else and want to please Him, then you'll be able to trust each other because you know the other person is striving to be the best they can be and is repentant and prayerful and will keep their vows. And the other things are you must have respect and admiration for each other. Jeffy's brow furrowed. Go on. Well, I respect your dad, and I admire him, and he respects and admires me above any other human. Each of us has earned that respect and admiration. So even if we disagree with each other, we have the respect for each other to listen and understand. Now, Jeffy, your father leads this family. He's meant to lead, and I give him that. What he says goes. But you see, because I trust him and respect him and admire him, I have no problem with that. If I didn't admire your dad, it may not be that way. Well, how could anyone not admire dad, right? But let's say he got lazy. He stopped training. He got out of shape. He started drinking or doing drugs. Even stopped loving God. I wouldn't stop loving him right away, but I would stop admiring him, and I would lose respect for him. And eventually the love would die, and I would start looking at other people to fill the void. So, tell me, Juneflower, what would be the answer to keep that from happening? Her mom had used her given name a second time, which to Jeffy meant this was a very important question. She thought for a few minutes, finally looking up at her mother's lovely face. As individuals, we each need to do and become the best we can be. It doesn't matter what we work at, as long as we do work at it. You admire Dad because he works very hard at being a great teacher, a great martial artist, a great father, a great friend, and a great husband. And I think mostly a servant of God. He progresses. He doesn't get stagnant. You admire him for that, and so do I. And I admire your relationship because you're respectful of each other and you don't yell at each other or argue, and you both keep growing and progressing. Shelley smiled. You got it, baby girl. We keep growing and progressing, so we continue to admire and respect each other. She leaned over and kissed her cheek. So, anything else you want to discuss about your relationship with Cameron? Jeffy chewed on her lip. Even if I learn to be without him emotionally, I still feel desperate physically. I mean, it's embarrassing to say it to my mother, but it's like my entire body aches and hurts, and the only thing that can make it feel better is being close to him. Wow, you do have it bad. Jeffy turned her head and leaned it against her mother's breast. Yeah, I do. Shelley stroked Jeffy's silky curls. First, don't ever be embarrassed to say anything to me, sweetheart. Bree and I, we share everything, and I'm thinking you're old enough to be admitted to that club. Jeffy hugged her mom, then turned at the sound of an approaching. She lunged at the window, knocking Shelley in the chin. Oh, sorry, Mom. They're here. Rubbing her chin, Shelley moved out of the way before Jeffy bowled her over. Jeffy dashed from the room. Eric joined his wife as she came out of Jeffy's bedroom. Our daughter is in love, Eric said sadly. Yes, she is. And I think all we can do is ride it out. Eric nodded. Wise as always, my love. Let's go greet our guest. Wait. He grabbed her, leaned her against the wall, and pressed his lips to hers. Shelley sighed as he deepened the kiss, and her body felt just what her daughter had described. Oh, Eric, she whispered, I do love you so. Granddad, little Joey complained as he came out of his room into the hall on his way to meet the company. Eric straightened quickly and looked up with a smile. Sorry, Jojo, I didn't realize anyone was upstairs. I'll try to restrain myself. Jeffy ran out the door, down the wide steps, across the circular drive, and stood in the middle of the green grass as the car approached. The car stopped, the doors opened, and two teenage girls screeched at the top of their lungs as they threw their arms around each other and jumped up and down. Shelley stood in the doorway and smiled at the comforting sight of her daughter acting like any other teenage girl. That does my heart good, Eric murmured. Shelley nodded. So very normal. I love it. You'd think they hadn't seen each other in months. Marissa just spent the night the day before they left to visit Jeff's parents. Mark and Joey moved past their parents and went down the steps to help unload luggage. Mark ruffled his son's hair. You help too, little man. I'm not little, the younger Joey insisted. Well, you're not a little boy, but you are a little man. And while the guys unloaded the trunk, Eric and Shelley watched as Cameron emerged from the car and stood silently, waiting for Marissa and Jeffy to calm down and break apart. It took only a few seconds once Jeffy knew he was standing there waiting on her. Marissa broke away and stood back smiling. It was like something out of a movie. Cameron moved first, then Jeffy ran to him, and they wrapped their arms around each other, and Jeffy buried her face against his chest, and that's how they stayed for what seemed to Shelley like an eternity. Finally, Jeffy tilted her face up, and there, in front of everyone, Cam bent and kissed her, albeit briefly. I've missed you so much, Cam whispered softly in her ear. Me too, Jeffy said. Cam pulled away, realizing her family was watching every move. Gently, he caressed her cheek with the back of his knuckle. Such a good-looking young man, Shelley whispered to Eric. He only grunted. Jeff and Mickey emerged, grabbed some luggage, and made their way up the steps. Shelley warmly and lovingly hugged them both and welcomed them to their home. Eric took a suitcase from Jeff's hand so that he could shake hands with him. Welcome as always, Eric said, then turned to Mickey. He looked deep into her eyes, searching for and touching on her pain. When her eyes filled with tears, he bent and kissed her cheek. I'm glad you're here, Mickey. May I speak to you later? She smiled and drew a breath. I'd like that. Eric gave a slight bow. Please make yourselves at home. He ushered them inside. New scene. It was only noon on Saturday, so Mickey was surprised by the amount of people already arriving, dozens of them being agents who worked with Jeff. The Kenos had insisted on throwing Jeff and Mickey an engagement party, and preferring the informal to the formal, everyone was out back preparing a giant barbecue. However, informal did not preclude catering. Eric said if he didn't have it catered, Shelley would wear herself out trying to see to all the details, and he wanted her to have fun too. Mickey and Jeff sat cuddled in a swing under a palm watching the kids play in the pool. Cam and 6-year-old little Joey just finished tossing Marissa into the pool and were now chasing Jeffy, who screamed as she darted away. Good luck on that, Jeff thought. Jeffy's quickness could be likened to Ricky, and the only way they could catch her is if Jeffy wanted to be caught. Though, considering it was Cam doing the catching, Jeffy just might concede. Ricky stood in the 3 feet giving his 3-year-old daughter, Taylor, diving tips because she'd been crying in frustration that she wasn't an expert yet like her 6-year-old brother, Eric, who was doing half-gainers off the board. Watching Ricky, with the sun glistening on his very ripped body, Mickey couldn't help but admire him. A few feet away, Ricky's wife, Bree, devastating in her bikini, slathered on lotion and stretched out on a lounge chair. Mickey's brow furrowed as she puzzled over what it would take to make a happy marriage when both parties were as famous as Ricky and Bree. "What are you frowning at?" Jeff asked. Mickey turned to him with a smile. "I'm just wondering about Ricky's and Bree's marriage. You know, the old Hollywood curse. Will they stay together? Are they happy?" "I think they're happy. I think they'll always be happy. I mean, look at their relationship. It's not based on fear, you know?" "No, I don't know. Are you making a comment about me being afraid of my own shadow?" "No, Mick, not that kind of fear, sweetheart. You've been through a hell and have a good reason to feel afraid, though I'm hoping you'll eventually work through that because the past should not define you. But I'm talking about I'm talking about fear of losing each other. It's like they have confidence in themselves and they have confidence in each other and trust. They trust each other and they allow each other to be just who they want to be. No restrictions. And what if Ricky decides he wants someone else? Well, that would hurt Bree, I'm sure. And since they're married and they are extremely honorable people, they would never cheat on their spouse. And I know they made vows that they would never break because I was at their wedding. But say they weren't married. Pretend they were just boyfriend and girlfriend. If Bree were to live in fear of Ricky finding someone else and be all clingy and possessive, then it could bring about the exact thing she fears. Should she live always in fear that she may lose him? No, of course not. He wouldn't feel the need to go searching for anyone else because he feels happy and free right where he is. It's like try to hold on to someone too tight and they will for sure want to be let go. Mickey nodded, but give them freedom and space and have trust in them, and the time together will be happy, and no one will want to go anywhere. Exactly. She leaned her head against his chest and sighed. I hope our relationship will be like that. Well, we'll make sure of it. How about I promise to always let you be you, to respect your opinions, even if I disagree, and to work things out as equal partners? She smiled. And that we will communicate and talk to each other about our hopes and fears. Communication is the real key. That sounds like Grandmaster Kino talking. She smiled. Well, he's taught me a lot in a short amount of time. They looked up as more people arrived. They saw Nate and his family making their entrance. Nate's kids headed straight for the pool, while Shelley was busy welcoming their parents. And down on the beach, Agent Jack sat, his legs crossed, his hands palms up on his knees. Boss man Jason Lee and his wife Angel had also appeared sometime during Jeff and Mickey's conversation. They mingled with Eric and Shelley while their daughter, 13-year-old Kimmy, sat neatly on the side of the pool, her feet dangling in the water. Mickey worried that the girl might feel a little left out with Marissa being here and occupying Jeffy's attention. But she discovered her worries were for naught. Cameron headed straight to Kimmy, introduced himself, shook her hand, and jerked her into the pool. She let out a brief scream before she went under. Jeffy dove in, grabbed Kimmy, hugged her tight, and asked her if she was okay. Kimmy laughed at Jeffy. Of course I'm okay, silly. What's the problem? Cam asked. Did I do something wrong? Jeffy's brow creased. I don't know, Jeffy answered. It's just that, well, Kimmy, I just don't want her to be hurt. Don't be silly, Jeffy, Kimmy answered. He didn't hurt me. Besides, how many times have you pushed me in the pool? Jeffy nodded and backed away and climbed out of the pool and went to sit alone. Wisely, Cameron went to join her. What do you think that was all about? Mickey asked. Jeff shook his head. I don't know, but I have a feeling it's the beginning of a new episode in the crazy life of the Kino family. Jeff raised his hand in greeting to Justin Lee, Jason's attorney brother, who he just noticed sitting at the bar with his wife and chatting with the bartender. A moment later, Mark and Joey entered, each with a girl on their arms. Mark handed a lemonade to a beautiful Latino girl, while Joey escorted his girl down toward the ocean to walk along the beach. How hard was it, Mickey wondered, to be a member of a famous family like the Kinos and find a companion who was genuinely interested in you? Sighing with pleasure, Mickey gazed around at her surroundings. The place was like a tropical paradise. The deck they were on was huge and extended down the hill toward the beach in several tiered levels. Surrounded with palms and huge pots of flowers and greenery, it was as lush as a jungle. Below the deck was a flat beach area with a volleyball pit surrounded by beach chairs and umbrellas for spectators. Everywhere you looked, there were large coolers of beverages, not to mention the fully stocked and Mantiki bar. Closer to the house were tables filled with delectable dishes, barbecue, salads, fruits, desserts. So yummy. Jeff laced his fingers with Mickey and lifted her hand to his mouth. You okay? She smiled at him. I'm good. Really good, I think. How'd it go with Master Kino this morning? She knew he was referring to her talk with Eric shortly after breakfast. There's something about that man. It seems just being in his presence makes me feel calmer, or I don't know, grounded, I guess. He's so close to God. He talks about Jesus as if they were close friends. He's so full of love and peace. I think I love him. Should I be jealous? Moving closer to him, she ran the palm of her hand over his chest and reached up to cup his cheek. I think I'd like that, but I can't lead you on. I mean, I love him like, She stopped, unable to say the words. Like a father? Her eyes filled. Yes, like that. Ah, sweetheart. Knowing Master Kino like I do, he'd be more than willing to step into the role. I think he already has. I think so too. He took her hand from his face and kissed it, then lowered his head to kiss her. Mickey closed her eyes and let the feelings take her. The power and heat that emanated from this man, the strength. She felt protected and loved and safe. So very safe. He took care of her, yet he allowed her to stand up and be strong. And her strength didn't threaten him at all. He encouraged it. He wanted only her happiness. And she wanted his. And she wanted him. And the chemistry was incredible. And even now, with people all around, she wanted to lose herself in him. He ended the kiss, his eyes burning into hers, and she knew he felt the same way. Jeff, she began. He smiled sweetly at her. Yes, baby. She smiled back at him. You're still feeling it? Yeah, I am. You? She laughed and nodded. Yeah, I am. At that moment, Marissa came from behind and threw her soaking wet arms around her sister and hugged her hard. Oh, Rissa, you're getting me all wet. Marissa giggled. I know, I meant to. I just wanted to let you know how happy I am, how light I feel now that now that we're out from under. Oh, heck. I can't seem to say what I mean. Does it make me just a horrible person to be glad he's gone? Mickey patted her sister's arm, which was still wrapped around her, resting on her upper chest. You can never be a horrible person, Rissa. I understand what you mean, sweetie. I feel happy too, like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. Yeah, like that. She kissed her older sister's cheek. You guys come play volleyball with us. Mickey grinned. Okay, but Jeff and I get to be on the same team. Fine, come on. Well, where's Jeffy and Cameron? Marissa's lips pressed tightly together. They went upstairs to change clothes. Jeff sat up straight and glanced up toward the balconies. Maybe I'd better. Don't you dare, Jeff, Mickey said. Marissa giggled. The whole family knows those two are going to need some alone time. They're okay with it. And how do you know that? Cam told me he's been approached by every single one of them. They keep telling him how young Jeffy is, how they believe in not having sex unless you're married, reminding him that they are all some kind of level of black belt, and a few of them have asked him if he has protection with him. Jeff chuckled. Marissa went on. Jeffy says they've accepted that she's in a little different situation and will allow her some alone time, but there will be a point where she will be reminded that brains or not, she's only 15. She said her parents admit they're in uncharted waters and will have to play this by ear. I just love how open and honest everyone is in this family. When I grow up and get married, I want my family to be just like this one. A great aspiration, Jeff said with a nod. Come on, let's play. They played Olympic indoor rules, six-man teams, a best of three. Two full teams waited to take over for the next losing team, and Marissa's team had consisted of Justin Lee and his wife Lori, Jack and Nate, and Kimmy, and they had already been eliminated. On court now were Jeff, Mickey, Ricky, Bree, and two Ameritech agents playing against Eric, Shelley, Mark, Joey, Stephen, a good friend of Rick's, and Angel, Jason's wife. Cam and Jeffy had yet to rejoin the party. Kimmy and Marissa, having grown bored with the competition, walked with the kids around the bend to some rocks where the children began climbing, pretending they were doing something their grandfather used to do in Hawaii, which was climb waterfalls. Since little Joey and Eric were in the lead, it appeared they'd played this game many times, with Tiny Taylor trying to keep up. Meanwhile, inside the house, upstairs in the pretty lavender room that overlooked the front yard, Cam had just pushed Jeffy onto her back as his lips moved over hers. She sighed with pleasure. Her mind scattered, her heart lurched. She let go completely, and then she gasped loudly. "What is it?" Cam asked casually. Did I hurt you?" Jeffy wrestled her way back to a sitting position, her eyes wide, her mouth open. "Jeffy, what is it?" "Something's wrong. Something is terribly wrong. I have to go." She ran for the door. Back on court, the score into the second game of the current match was 7-5, and Eric served the ball right at Mickey. Heart pounding, she cupped her hands and knocked the ball straight up, then moved out of the way. She breathed a sigh of relief that she hadn't messed up. Ricky moved in, set the ball, and Jeff jumped high and powered it over the net. Cruelly, Mickey thought, right at Shelley. Yet Shelley dove and popped the ball up. Joey set and Mark retaliated by slamming the ball right back at Mickey. Mickey didn't fare as well as Shelley had, landing flat on her face and missing the ball completely. Mickey pouted when Jeff offered his hand and pulled her to her feet, brushed sand from her face. "You okay?" She nodded. "Sorry." "Oh, that's okay, baby." He turned back at Mark with a grin and pointed. "You're gonna pay." "Bring it on," Mark taunted. 6-7, Eric called before he tossed the ball up to serve. Strangely, though, he caught the ball and stood still, his eyes looking off into the distance. Mickey noticed then that Ricky had turned in the same direction and started off the court. Then Shelley, Mark, and Joey, they all started walking off the court. "What's happening?" Mickey asked. The answer came a few seconds later. Jeffy came running from the house. "Dad! Daddy! Something's wrong. Where are the kids?" Eric didn't have a chance to answer before the next cry. "Dad!" Little Joey screamed as he came running from around the bend. "Dad! Uncle Rick!" Eric, Ricky, and the others ran toward the boy. Joey pointed behind him. "It's Eric. He fell. He's hurt." Ricky didn't wait for whatever else Joey had to say. He took off. The rest of the family was close behind. Ricky came around the bend to see his son's small body crumpled on the sand at the bottom of a cliff of rocks. His daughter Taylor was in Marissa's arms, crying. Kimmy Lee, on her knees, knelt over Eric, talking to him. She looked up as Ricky approached and pointed upward. "He was way too high. I told him to come down, but he slipped. He hit the rocks a few times on his way down." Ricky knelt next to his son, struggling to remain calm. Little Eric moaned and opened his eyes. "I fell, Dad." Greatly relieved to hear him speak, Ricky allowed himself to breathe. "I see that." He brushed his hand over his son's face, noting the blood oozing from a cut on the side of his head. "Can you move at all?" Little Eric squeezed his eyes shut and shook his head. "It hurts so bad. I don't want to move." "Okay, son, you're going to be okay. Tell me where it hurts the most," he asked, noticing the ugly bulge on his forearm. Ricky looked up at his father and wife arrived on the scene. Ricky knelt down by her son. "My arm, it hurts so bad." "Is that the only place?" "What about your back?" he asked, glancing at Bree when she gasped, noting the tears running down her face. Just my arm." "Eric, can you wiggle your toes for me?" He did as requested. "Good. Listen, son, I think you've broken your arm. I'm not going to lift you until the ambulance gets here, just in case anything else is injured, okay?" "I'm going to ride in the ambulance?" Noting the gleam in his son's eyes, he smiled. "Yeah, you are. I guess that's okay with you?" "Sure, I guess." Ricky looked up at his dad. "I assume you've already called." "You assumed correctly." "What were you doing?" Bree asked, trying to keep the hitch out of her voice. "Sorry, Mom. I know we're not supposed to go up so high. I don't know why I did." "I do," Ricky said, eyeing the many children standing around and We'll talk about it when you're feeling better. The paramedics arrived quickly and left quickly with their precious cargo. Mickey didn't know what to think about continuing with the silly party while Ricky and Bree left to follow the ambulance to the hospital. However, Eric and Shelley insisted that they shouldn't let such a little thing ruin everyone's good time. They were just extremely happy and grateful that little Eric wasn't hurt with anything worse than a broken arm. As the party resumed, Mickey cornered Master Kino. "May I ask you a question, Eric?" "Of course." "It seemed as if you and Ricky and the others knew something was wrong with little Eric even before Joey came to tell you." Eric nodded. "I knew something was wrong. I didn't know it was Eric." "So how did you know something was wrong? Some sort of parent connection type thing?" "Yes, some sort," he answered with a smile. "One of the things I teach my students is to become one with themselves, with the earth, with their fellow man, and mostly with God." "I hear that expression all the time," Mickey said, "to be one with God. But the idea is pretty vague, don't you think?" "Well, it can be. I try to teach a way to actually accomplish it." "And how is that? I mean, nutshell version, if you wouldn't mind sharing your thoughts." Eric laughed. "Well, sharing my thoughts is what I do. I'm a teacher. I teach them to surround themselves with love and forgiveness and compassion and positive thoughts." "Still sounds vague to me. How does one surround themselves with those things?" "By being those things. I simply teach them to give only love, forgiveness, compassion, and positive thoughts out to those they come in contact with. And then, no matter what others are offering to you, see only the love, forgiveness, etc." He waited to see if she understood. Mickey nodded. "There's more to this than just that, but there's not much room in a nutshell." "Well, what would you add?" "Well, the first thing I would add is prayer and faith in God. And then I would add that there are some things we do not tolerate, and that is evil. We confront evil with strength, but that is a lesson for another time." "Okay, I think I get it, but what you're asking sounds like sainthood. I mean, who can accomplish that?" "Well, we can only work toward the goal of perfection and not be frustrated because we're not there yet. Sometimes, but not always, I and my students accomplish this oneness, and when we do, it seems we can sense things as they happen. Shelley would tell you it's like sensing a disturbance in the force. Today, it seems something came over me. I knew something was wrong, as did the others. And sometimes I get these feelings before the bad thing happens, and sometimes I've been able to stop it. Sometimes I'm not as in tune as I should be. I've had to learn to forgive myself for this. Today, I was only partially in tune. Probably because I was thinking about the score of the volleyball game. Hardly an important venture." Mickey gave a soft laugh, a soft sigh. "You have a way of putting things in perspective. You and your family are like not even real." He laughed. "Oh, we're real and completely imperfect, which you'll find as you get to truly know us. Yet, even with all of our imperfections, we'd like for you to think of us as your family now, too." She smiled and gave a nod. "I'd like that." The partygoers continued in their revelry. Babies and children were taken inside for afternoon naps, and while food was inhaled and drinks were guzzled, Jeffy tried to explain to Cameron why she'd known what she did. Before anyone knew it, Ricky, Bree, and young Eric were back with everyone gathering round to sign Eric's cast. Over the course of the day, Mickey had been introduced to, hugged, and kissed by dozens of people, many whose names she was sure she'd never remember. She was asked about the kidnapping and offered condolences by well-meaning, compassionate people. Nevertheless, it began to wear on her, which was her reason for taking up yet another frozen daiquiri. And when she stumbled slightly as she passed the pool, Jeff took her by the arm and escorted her inside. She smiled up at him, and he returned the smile and gracefully removed the glass from her hand. "Let me take that for you." "Hey, give that back." "I'm thinking you've had enough." "I'll be the judge of that." He smiled. That's what you said the last time you decided you were going to get wasted. Sweetheart, are you upset?" She shrugged. "Talk to me," he said, ushering her down the hall and into Eric's study, where he knew they would be alone. He sat on the leather couch and pulled her down. She snuggled up to him. "I don't know what to say when people say they're sorry about what happened. It's like I want to tell them to not be sorry. I'm glad my mother blew away my stepfather. I know Marissa asked me the same question earlier, but what kind of horrible person does that make me? It makes you a human person. You don't feel that way, do you? You're not happy she blew him away. Yeah, well, that's only because I wanted to watch his face as he was prosecuted and put behind bars for the rest of his life. But really, I secretly thought about killing him myself. So you see, I'm human too. He leaned back and rubbed his hand over her arm. Mickey snuggled up against his throat and kissed his neck. I want you right here, right now. He chuckled. You're definitely drunk, Mick. And you won't do it when I'm drunk, right? Correct. But I need, he kissed her, slowly, softly. What you need is to know that you are the most amazing woman I've ever met. You're beautiful and strong and important. Important? Yes, important. You are a survivor, an overcomer, a role model. You are a person of great worth in Marissa's eyes, in my eyes, and in the eyes of God. And I love you, and I won't abandon you, and we are going to live happily ever after. Mickey smiled at Jeff. With Jeff, she felt safe, warm, and loved. So very loved. She hadn't realized until her most recent session with Eric that she'd felt unloved almost her entire life, that she'd felt fear and resentment only on a daily basis, and that realizing someone really can and does love her is a goal she must reach. Her mother and stepfather had made her feel expendable, like she had no worth. But Jeff valued her and helped her to see that she did have worth. Her eyes met his, and he looked deep into her soul. He loved her. He did, and she loved him back. How could she not? He looked at her with such devotion, such passion. As if reading her mind, he leaned down and kissed her again. I love you, Mackenzie Daly. I love you, Jefferson Davis. Oh, there you are, Shelley said. Jeff grinned. Mickey was feeling a little weepy, he said. Shelley smiled sweetly. Well, it looks like she's feeling much better now. I guess playing doctor suits you. Jeff only rolled his eyes. She touched his arm. Will you come out front? We have a surprise for you, Shelley said with a grin before she turned and headed toward the door. Mickey headed toward the large window. What do you suppose is the surprise? Do you think someone bought us a new car? Wouldn't that be great? Jeff answered. He looked over at her where she stood by the window. What are you smiling at? Mickey motioned out the window. Some more guests have arrived, and there are 5 of the cutest little blondes I've ever seen. What? Jeffy said, hurrying over to the window. He laughed out loud. Oh, man, it's Keegan. He left Mickey and sprinted out the front door. Keegan Tanner turned from shaking hands with Eric as Jeff tore down the steps. The 2 men threw themselves into the other's embrace, completely unashamed of the emotion 2 big burly guys were showing. They slapped backs and backed off when Keegan slapped Jeff's cheek affectionately. You've been in the news, buddy. Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with you. You can have my fame, I don't want it. Elizabeth Tanner came around the car, smiling her sweet smile as always. Lizzie, Jeff said. He hugged her close and patted the head of the dark-haired little boy she held. Hello there, Gabriel. You've gotten so big. How old are you now? The child scrambled down from his mother's arms. I'm 4, he said, grinning a mischievous grin. Hi, Uncle Jeff, Heather said as she approached. She was the eldest at 10. Well, you've turned into quite a little lady, haven't you? She giggled. Yes, sir. He smiled warmly at her and shook his head. It's amazing how much you've changed just since the last time I saw you. Jeff turned and looked over the 2 sets of twins as they stood amazingly quiet, waiting for his attention. Okay, let me try. He pointed at one with her hair in a ponytail and a frown on her face. This must be Rose, he said. The 9-year-old grinned. Yep, good job, Uncle Jeff. He touched Violet's head. So that makes you Violet. And you, he said, pointing at the smallest one, must be Lily. And you're Daisy. 8-year-old Daisy smiled. You did it. Daddy says you're getting married. Yes, I am. He turned, looking for Mickey, who stood at the top of the front steps, and she came down slowly. Jeff put his arm around her. This is Mackenzie, but everyone calls her Mickey. Hello, Mickey said softly. She shook hands with each child. I swear you must be just the most adorable children I've ever seen. Too bad they're not as sweet as they look, Keegan said. Daddy, Heather whined playfully. Keegan stroked her long blonde hair. Sorry, I let the secret out. Mickey offered her hand to Keegan Tanner. I heard about you in the news several years ago. I'm so glad I get the chance to say thank you in person. By saving Jeff's life, you saved mine too. Keegan nodded. I'm just glad I was able to get to him. Jeff is a good guy. You would have done the same for anyone, Jeff put in. Lizzie moved forward, linked her arm in Keegan's. That he would. She smiled up at her husband. Keegan lovingly brushed the back of his hand over his wife's cheek before he turned back to Mickey. This is Lizzie, my angel, whom you can see is very good for my ego. Lizzie moved forward and hugged Mickey. It's so nice to meet you. I hope we can be great friends. And I hope you'll come visit us down in Pine Forest. The girls seem to live for the day Jeff comes to visit. Mickey smiled. I like that. You have a beautiful family. Thank you, Lizzie said softly. She touched her husband's arm. I'm so grateful for them every single day. Well now, Shelley said, was it a good surprise? Jeff ran over and picked her up in a big bear hug. The best. Thank you so much. You're welcome. We were just so glad they came. Eric doesn't know what he'd do if his angel girls didn't come see him at least once a year. Exactly, Eric said as he knelt down, so where's my hugs? 5 giggling blondes and 1 small, dark-haired boy ran at him. The boy stopped right in front of Grandmaster Kino and bowed slowly. Hello, Gabe, Eric greeted. Hello, Grandmaster Kino, little Gabriel said reverently. It was a ritual they always shared. Then all 6 children bowled him over. Mickey watched in delight as it turned into a giant kung fu brawl with little voices yelling ki-eyes fiercely as they punched and kicked at the Grandmaster. Mickey stood mesmerized by the adorable scene. There was so much love in this family, in this home. She glanced over at Shelley and Lizzie and Keegan, and they stood patiently, smiling, obviously enjoying it as much as her. Jeff took her hand and smiled down at her. That will be us one day. Mickey looked up into his eyes. I want that. He bent and kissed her softly. You'll have it. Okay, Shelley commanded. Enough. Come in. There's lots of food and drinks out back, and the kids can swim if you like. We had some excitement here today. Get the kids to tell you about it. Well, what are you waiting for? Come in, come in. Shelley waved emphatically. The kids ran ahead, followed by Keegan and Lizzie, and Jeff smiled at Mickey and offered his arm. May I escort you to that life you want? Mickey grinned and hooked her arm in his. Yes, please. And that is the end of book 6. Stay tuned. Book 7, Warriors in Jesus' Name, is coming.